to let James Jones cook. I'm telling you, I've let him cook for 4 minutes. But before I do, let me set up why he's cooking. Okay, so Joe Burrow, and I respect this out of Joe Burrow, okay? I respect this a lot. I respect this so much. Joe Burrow was at the podium yesterday for the Bengals OTAs session. And essentially he tells them, the media, that if he had played better last year, the Bengals would not have missed the playoffs. Look at him taking accountability and having leadership. And I'm going to remember this forever, okay? So Pro Football Talk writes up about this, and he talks about, hey, usually when people talk about why the Bengals missed the playoffs, they point to the defense. And I think rightfully so, right? Like the defense is bad. They ranked 25th in both points and yards allowed. And the offense had the 6th most points in the league. Okay. Joe Burrow, I believe, has the highest completion percentage. Okay. He led the league in passing yards, touchdowns, and completed more than 70% of his passes. Okay. But this is what he said. Now, to be fair, a lot of times you put up those kind of numbers because you're always playing from behind and you're really, slinging the ball around once it's the fourth quarter and you're trying to come from behind. So that definitely helps those numbers. But nonetheless, he did lead the league in those. This is what Joe had to say. He said, if I had played even better, we wouldn't have been in that spot that we were in. He told the team website. He said, I just focus on getting better myself. I feel like everyone in the locker room feels the same way. If I go out there and play better than I did last year, then it doesn't matter what goes on anywhere else. Okay. And I think he's right. Now, if you were to ask me, to be fair to Joe Burrow, if we're looking at the list of things that are going wrong in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow is not at the top of that list. He's probably not in the top 10 of that list. However, his statement still stands true. And that is where James Jones and the crew of the facility comes into play. Okay? They asked this question. Does Joe Burrow need to make the playoffs in order to keep his top 5 quarterback status? Okay. And I think that's a legitimate question. So they start talking about that. And James Jones is basically saying, Joe Burrow can't be a top 5 guy if you can't even make the playoffs. And then, even though the defense was poor, very poor for the Bengals, he explains why not making the playoffs for sure should also be laid at the feet of Joe Burrow, and I'm about to let him cook.
James, is it time to reconsider his top 5 quarterback
Why
status?
Let the quarterback go first.
No, because I want to try. I'm a yes. I want to see if you guys can entertain my decision.
Well, I'm not, so I'm finna just let the quarterback have it in this situation right here. So, first off, no, I am not going to have him in that elite conversation because I can't put him in that elite conversation if it's 3 years in a row you do not make the playoffs. All right? So now, I know the quarterback is going to say, well, his defense gave up 35 points a game and all this funny stuff and all that. So let's just talk about the losses real quick for JoJo Burrow. All right, let's talk about it. I want to show y'all the losses, too. So week 1, let's see it. Look at them, right? So week 1, we're going to break this stuff down, too. So those is Joe Burrow's losses. So let's start week 1, right? Joe Burrow, loss. 164 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks.
Ugly.
Jacoby Brissett, 130 passing yards, right? Played the same, right? His team lost, all right? Let's go to week 2. Joe Burrow, 258 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 fumble. Patty Mahomes, the defense ain't no good. That's why they lost that. Patty Mahomes, 151 passing yards, 2 interceptions by the defense. And they lost. Why they lose, Chase? Because he fumbled at the end of the game. Let's go to week 3, the Commanders, because we all know Jaden Daniels outperformed him in the Commanders game. All right, he had 300 yards passing. Jaden Daniels had 254 and 39 more yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. And we know the blitz came down in his face. He made one more play than Joe Burrow. All right, let's go to the Ravens loss because I want you to hear me. Let's go to the Ravens loss. That's all good. Let's go to the Ravens loss, right? Joe Burrow, 392 passing yards.
That's a lot now.
And 5 TDs.
It's a bad defense he going. It's a bad defense he going against now.
Bad defense he going, but then Lamar Action Jackson.
What he done did? What he done
350 yards. 55 more yards on the ground, so that's over 400 yards total. 4 touchdowns.
Ooh, so he did more than.
How they lose that game, though? A Joe Burrow interception at the end of the game.
OT, right?
So let's go to the next loss. To the Eagles. All right. Joe Burrow, 234 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Jalen Hurts, more passing yards, a touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns with his legs. He outplayed Joe Burrow and won that game.
Yes, he did.
All right?
Wow.
The last loss to the Ravens. All right, Joe Burrow, 428 yards passing.
It's a bad defense, sound like.
Touchdowns.
Hard to beat.
Lamar Action Jackson, 290 passes, 4 more touchdowns. Had the ball in his hands with 2 minutes left in the game, went down there, took the lead. Joe Burrow came back, tied the game, 2-point conversion. It's one-on-one with Jamar Chase, and you throw it to Milton or somebody.
That was that one. Y'all remember that. Y'all remember that.
Don't make the final play to help your team win that game. And then the Chargers. You watched the Chargers game, they was down 26-0 in the first half. So he came out in the second half, and he threw for 356 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Justin Herbert had 300 yards passes, 2 touchdowns. And his team won the game because he outperformed Joe Burrow. So the last loss to the Steelers.
Is that right? 414 passing yards by Russell.
This might be the best one.
Okay. The best one.
309 passing yards, 3 touchdowns by Joe Burrow.
Okay, Joey, okay.
And 1 interception.
A bad defense you bought out.
One interception, because we all know when Russ came in the game, the Steelers said, we ain't got to play defense. Right. Russell Wilson had 414 yards passing and 3 touchdowns.
He balled out.
He outperformed Joe Burrow.
Him too?
So in his losses, as much as we want to talk about the defense, Joe Burrow ain't delivered, man. Or he might have delivered, but the other quarterback balled a little bit harder than him and won the football
keep it real,
game.
dog. That was a good job, James. Yo,
you know what I'm saying?
That was a breakdown.
Woo! Tila said it best. He's not just cooking, he's frying. Bobby, your reaction.
Oh, man. 4 minutes. People were like, hey, let me kick my feet up and listen to 4 straight minutes of James Jones. I mean, it's true. It's true. Unfortunately for Joe, who, again, had a prolific year, really historic year in terms of the metric side of things, the mistakes came in extremely untimely manners. And obviously, we watched that firsthand during the Ravens-Bengals game, particularly the overtime game, because that was a game that I felt like Cincy coughed up, right? The Ravens won it, but in a lot of ways, I kind of felt like the Bengals lost that game.
Be more specific. It was
Joe
Burrow coughed it up.
Burrow lost that game. And Cincy coughed that game away. Joe coughed that game away. So, since the AFC Championship game, just to reiterate an overall point, the Bengals haven't made the playoffs. I think that needs to be reiterated, because had Lamar's Ravens not made the playoffs in 2 consecutive seasons at this point in his Super Bowl or bust era of his career, phase of his career, there'd be alarm bells ringing from all over, every single direction. I don't hear that as much for Cincy and Joe Burrow as much at all. And I don't know why. Is it just because he's the prototypical sort of like looks the part, plays the part, sort of the Tom Brady mold-esque surgical in the pocket? He does have a little bit of mobility here and there, but he's clutch and things of that nature. Like, is that why he's become sort of the golden boy? I don't know. I have no idea why. But all I know is if a similar, really back-to-back years of shortcomings happened for Lamar, it would be a lot more noisy right now for 8 than it has been for Burrow. So, no, I thought it was well said there from James Jones, and obviously it's factual. It's wild to think that in the middle of what was his best statistical season, Sarah, and a historic one in a lot of ways, it's hard to think that there was room for blemishes, but He just outlined them. They were there.
To your point, why aren't the alarms being sounded? Because Joe Burrow gets the excuses. Now, this is a tough act to follow, James Jones, but I want to see if I can cook some more. Because there is, let me add this to the screen. Okay, listen, yes, he has a bad defense, but let's talk about what Lamar Jackson has overcome versus Joe Burrow, okay? In points allowed, last year, the Ravens defense gave up 21.2. We know by the end of the year, the Ravens had the second worst pass defense. They were leaky, which is why Joe Burrow, in part why Joe Burrow put up so many yards and so many touchdowns against the Ravens. Like, it was just like they couldn't stop a cold. They couldn't stop anything. So the defense allowed 21.2 points per game for the Ravens. The Bengals, 25.5. So we're talking about a little more than 4 points more per game, which is a lot in the NFL world, but it's not crazy amounts more, okay? Meanwhile, let's look at the offensive side. The Ravens and Lamar Jackson, we have to keep it real, has nowhere close to the weapons that Joe Burrow has. I like Zay Flowers. I like Rashad Bateman. You got Mark Andrews. You got Isaiah Likely. But let's not be crazy, okay? Joe Burrow has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and he has his own tight end too. And yet, the Ravens scored more points per game than Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And so Lamar Jackson with 30.5 points per game would have overcome that defense more often, and he did overcome the 31st worst passing defense in the league. Cincinnati Bengals put up 27.8 points per game. So you got to be able to overcome it the way Lamar has. And Lamar has way fewer weapons on offense to do it with. With fewer weapons, he scored more points. He led an offense that scored more points per game. Okay? Here it is right here. The Ravens had the second worst pass defense. Bengals had the 21st ranked pass defense. Ravens had a worse pass defense. Okay? Let's look at the quarterback betrayal index, which Mike Sando of The Athletic put together. Now, all the way up until December 19th, which is a vast majority of the season, Lamar Jackson was the most betrayed quarterback by his defense and special teams. Finally, at the very end, Joe Burrow became the most betrayed, but they are neck and neck. So
Can you say that date once more when this was?
December. Well, this graphic up here is when the season was over. And that is when Joe Burrow became the most betrayed quarterback and Lamar was number 2. Okay. But on December 19th, Lamar had been the most betrayed quarterback. In other words, they kept going back and forth.
Okay. So that would have been like week 16, maybe
yes.
Week 15, 16. Okay.
Correct. We're right around there. So both of them were dealing with either terrible defense or terrible defense and special teams. And I think what hurt Lamar also was obviously Justin Tucker and the special teams missing all those field goals and other things like that. So it's not like Joe Burrow's the only one that has to overcome his like bad play. Lamar Jackson has too. But yet when you talk about Lamar, it's always Lamar's fault if the Ravens don't come through. But when you talk about Joe Flacco or when you talk about Joe Burrow, it's like, oh, it's the defense. So he gets the excuses, Lamar does not. Okay? Let's go with that. So we've got excuses for Joe Burrow, not because of the defense, and his defense does stink, but so did Lamar Jackson's. Lamar overcame his better than Joe Burrow did. Then let's follow the money, Bobby. Let's look at this going into 2025. We know how much Joe Burrow spoke out to have both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins get paid. That's what he has to do. Therefore, the offense must overcome the defense. Lamar had overcome this defense, but they were being paid. Your defense isn't even being paid, and you got weapons, yet Lamar's overcoming them. Look at this wide receiver. How much they're paying at the Bengals. They're number 1 in the league in how much they'll be paying wide receivers, almost $60 million. That's number 1 in the league. How much are the Ravens going to be spending at wide receiver? Just under $20 million. Number 31 in the league. Yet Lamar can overcome his defense and special teams, but Joe Burrow can't. Okay, so follow the money. And and then so follow the money excuses. And then, yeah, the QB stats is Lamar's leading his league. So that's it at the end. At the end of the day, yes, Joe Burrow has a poor defense. Not going to take that away from him. And I appreciate, so I'm really more upset at people giving him excuses. Joe Burrow himself, this is not me bashing Joe Burrow. He himself said, I need to play better. Okay. So I appreciated that about Joe. But from a national media point of view, I agree. How do you keep getting put into the elite quarterback conversation when you've missed the playoffs 2 times in a row and you're being paid with wide receivers to overcome a defense that is not being paid as much? Lamar Jackson's able to overcome it. That's why he's being called elite. And when Lamar Jackson doesn't overcome it in the playoffs, he gets all the blame for it. Joe Burrow's not even making the playoffs, and yet he gets those excuses. So I agree. I think Joe Burrow is a great quarterback, but does he deserve to be in the top 5 after missing the playoffs 2 years in a row? No. So he can reemerge if the Bengals make the playoffs. He can reemerge. But right now, I don't think he should get that rubber stamp into the top 5.